It's 12:14 a.m. on June 1st in the city of Louisville, Kentucky. And at the corner of Broadway and 26th Street, the scene is noisy but peaceful.
Yeah, I heard, man. What up?
A crowd is gathered near Dino's Food Market in defiance of the governor's 9 p.m. curfew order. There's dancing and loud music. The alcohol flows, but there's no sign of unrest. Tending to his barbecue grill across the street is David McAtee, known to everyone in the city, from the mayor on down, as Yaya. Mr. McAtee is 53 years old, and his barbecue joint is a fixture in town. He's known to provide free meals to homeless people, and even to Louisville police officers.
There you go. I saw you had to say.
In the next 2 minutes, everything will change, and Mr. McAtee will be dead, killed by officers from that very same police force. Crucially, police say it appears he fired first. Our team at the NBC News Verification Unit investigated what happened in those 2 minutes, and we found a more complicated story. It shows how law enforcement arrived on an American street corner,
Police just came.
armed with the weapons of war, and how the cycle of escalation that followed left a much-loved man dead and a city in mourning. The authorities now face serious questions. What would lead a pillar of the community like Mr. McAtee to suddenly fire a gun into the night? And why were police body cameras, meant to shed light on incidents like this, not turned on when the gunfire started?
Kentucky was a powder keg that weekend. And when you send heavily armed soldiers into a peaceful gathering, and they're, fully armed, they're not identified as law enforcement, you are throwing a match into that powder keg. And then you want to be surprised that something happens?
To start answering these questions, we need to understand that by June 1st, Louisville was already a city on edge. 2 months before George Floyd's death sparked national protests, Louisville saw its own local tragedy. On March 13th, police killed Breonna Taylor, an unarmed paramedic, during a raid on her apartment. Police said they were returning fire after one officer was shot and wounded by her boyfriend, who was in bed beside her. Her death led to protests and then widespread unrest. Like police around the country, Louisville officers resorted to force. They've repeatedly used pepper balls, a painful but non-lethal form of crowd control, fired like a paintball. Let's fast forward to June 1st. Louisville police and National Guard arrived at the intersection that night to disperse people still out after curfew.
In the car and leave. Let's go. I'm gone.
A Facebook video by Chris Smith, a local resident, captures officers telling people to move along. You can see Mr. Smith here in this CCTV footage of the scene.
They didn't ask me nothing or nothing.
His video provides the only audio recording we have of the shooting. We synced that audio with footage from 4 other perspectives to give a complete picture. It's now 12:15 a.m., and Mr. McAtee is across the street at his barbecue restaurant. What happens over the next 60 seconds? It starts with this officer, crossing from the parking lot towards Mr. McAtee's restaurant. As they advance, they fire pepper balls. One shot hits the ground, and then more hit the table, and finally the door frame of the shop itself. From the video, there's no clear reason why the officer is shooting like this. No one appears to be resisting them. Louisville police guidelines say officers should use the lowest level of force reasonable. The police did not respond to us when we asked if they used excessive force. Another camera shows the perspective from inside Mr. McAtee's shop. Young people rush in after the police fire pepper balls. Mr. McAtee himself is pushing towards the door to see what's going on. He appears to reach for a gun at his side. Mr. McAtee's niece is out of view right now, but as the pepper balls strike the door around her, she lurches backwards. Mr. McAtee leans out the door and raises his arm. Police say this is the moment he fired one shot from his pistol. We need both angles, synced with the audio from the Facebook Live,
That's all you had to say.
to understand what happened.
Shots fired, shots fired. Shots fired. Look, they all got their guns out.
Mr. McAtee has been shot, and he falls. His niece points to the handgun on the floor. David McAtee's nephew, Marvin, was there that night. He says his uncle would never have fired directly at police, and may have mistakenly thought his shop was under attack from looters. He also says police fired the first shots, even if it was pepper balls.
They trying to remix that part to say, well, maybe he shot a gun first and then they shot a gun, but shooting is shooting.
A total of 18 shots were fired by 2 Louisville police officers and 2 unidentified Kentucky National Guard soldiers. The guards say they're not releasing the soldiers' identities out of concerns for their safety. Both officers have been put on administrative reassignment. It's worth noting one of them, Katie Cruz, is under investigation for a Facebook post from before the shooting, where she said she hoped a protester would get injured. Back to the scene itself, we can clearly see the officer who fired the pepper balls then starts shooting with their sidearm. These sparks seem to be from the National Guard firing with rifles. Under city policy, the police officers should have had their body cameras on, but neither Officer Cruz nor Officer Allen did. That means we can't see what happened from their perspective. We can't know what they saw when they opened fire. The officers' failure to turn on their body cameras led Louisville's mayor to fire the police chief.
This type of institutional failure will not be tolerated.
Mr. McAtee's killing is now under investigation by local, state, and federal authorities. Louisville police say they're saddened by his death.
This video appears to show Mr. McAtee firing a gun outside of his business door as officers who were using pepper balls to clear the Dino's lot were approaching his business. This video does not provide all of the answers, but we are releasing it to provide transparency.
David McAtee's death has deeply shocked those who knew him, including Chris Smith, who took the Facebook video we've been watching.
You can just sit over, pull up a seat next to him and just sit there and listen to music and laugh. You know what I mean? And while you're sitting out here, like, you want a burger? You know what I mean? You want to try his rib? Taste his sauce. He's one of those guys. That's why I'm so mad. Because like I said, I was just out here, just talked to him. And then, you know, within freaking couple of hours, he's dead.
Make sure you all eat.
Protests continue in Louisville, and demonstrators have added the name of David McAtee to that of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, yet another Black American to die at the hands of police.
I can't breathe! I can't breathe!